Well, folks, earlier this week, in a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court ruled that, quote, no one can be forced to be vaccinated, end quote. The court also ruled that bodily integrity and personal integrity are protected under the law as a constitutional right. Wow. For those who subscribe to freedom of choice and medical privacy, this is indeed an incredible decision by the Supremes. But alas and alack, I forgot one very important detail, folks. It was the Supreme Court of India, not Canada, that made this landmark decision on May the 2nd. And joining me now to discuss how India's High Court got it right on vaccine mandates, while this country refuses to budge on such COVID-19 inspired regulations, is Rupa Subramanya, a columnist for the National Post. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Rupa, and I hope I didn't massacre the pronunciation of your surname.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Rupa, you wrote a superb column in the Post yesterday contrasting India and Canada when it comes to the vax mandates. The question arises, why do Indians finally have freedom from these oppressive rules, whereas Canadians are still essentially stuck in lockdown mode?
That's an excellent question, and it's not just India that seems to be in the end of the pandemic. It's a whole bunch of different countries. Canada is increasingly an outlier in the world when it comes to vaccine mandates, especially as they apply to, for example, the civil service. I can't think of any other country which insists that federal government workers should be vaccinated, especially when they've been working from home. The judicial system of the two countries, India and Canada, are very similar. They're very similar. I mean, they have the same parent essentially, and it's and also there's also a culture of deference between in Canada, in the Canadian judicial system, and the Indian judicial system. So that's what makes this Supreme Court ruling extraordinary, because it begs the question: why aren't the courts? Why isn't this happening here? Given how potent the issue of vaccine mandates has been for the last few months, the judgment was remarkable in the sense that they tried to strike a delicate balance between the government's responsibility towards maintaining public health and safety and bodily autonomy of the average Indian citizen, and that in the context of this current situation where infection rates are actually low, and also they refer to emerging scientific evidence that shows that the transmission rates between the unvaccinated and vaccinated are almost on par. So what is the rationale behind vaccine mandates? And that was the original rationale for vaccine mandates. If you remember last fall, this was before Omicron, the rationale was to curb transmission. But post-Omicron and post-Omicron subvariants, which are highly transmissible, even people with 3 or 4 doses are getting COVID. I got COVID after my 3rd booster. So, what purpose do mandates serve at this point?
You're quite right, Rupa. It's not just India. I know very recently Switzerland and Greece, as you noted in your column, they've gotten rid of the mandates. Even, my golly, New Zealand arguably had the strictest mandate laws on the books. They're now freeing things up. I believe on May 1st, it no longer applies to international travelers. That's the vax mandates. So what is the unspoken strategy here, Rupa? I mean, is this really all about politics? Is this about the Justin Trudeau Liberals demonizing the unvaxxed for political gain somehow?
Well, I've been desperately searching for the science. What is the scientific rationale behind these mandates? And as I mentioned to you earlier, the original rationale was to curb transmission. Now that everybody is getting infected, that becomes, that basically falls apart. So then the question is, so why are these mandates in place? And I can't help but think that this is all about politics at this point. And the more you demoralize the unvaccinated, the more you denigrate them, and all of that has been happening. We know that's been happening. The Freedom Convoy protesters, for example, have been demonized to such a great extent that I think many of them are actually feeling a little demoralized at this point. And I think it's all about politics. I think the Trudeau government probably wants to see where this is going to go. They probably just want to also attack their opponents in the Conservative Party, especially now that the leadership campaign is in full force. And I suppose that if you were a Conservative leader who came out in support of the convoy, this is they're hoping to play this as a wedge issue as long as it takes.
That was an excerpt from my daily TV-style show called The Ezra Levant Show. Each weekday, I do a monologue on the news of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest. I read some fan mail or hate mail, depends on which I like more. And we end with a video of the day. You can get it all at rebelnewsplus.com.